friends, and welcome back to our Access Guide to Disneyland Paris series, and today we are talking about rides. Now, I'm a wheelchair user and I went with two other wheelchair users and a team with all sorts of disabilities, so we're going to talk through all of the rides at Disneyland Paris and explain the access needs, where the access line is, whether you have to transfer or whether you can go in your wheelchair, whether there's flashing lights, etc, etc. So stay tuned and we'll explain absolutely everything you need to know about access and the rides at Disney. This might be pretty mammoth, so we're going to go zone by zone. So first up, we've got Main Street, and we didn't actually do any of these attractions, but you've got the railroad, the streetcars, and other Main Street vehicles. I think there's a police car and a fire engine. Basically, for access to these, none of them you can stay in your wheelchair. You have to be ambulatory, and they require 1 or 2 steps from my knowledge. So all of them are transfer only, but you can take service dogs on those ones. Next up, we're going to move into Discoveryland. First up, we've got Buzz Lightyear Laser Blast. And for this one, you can either transfer or you can go in your wheelchair. So what happened in our group is that Marley and me transferred and Lauren stayed in her wheelchair, and that meant that Fliss, the service dog, could come on the ride, and service dogs are allowed on this ride, which is great. So here's a quick video of how you get tied down onto the Buzz Lightyear ride. The only thing about the Buzz Lightyear ride is that it has flashing lights and strobe effects, so if you're photosensitive, it's not for you, and you access it via the exit of the ride. Buzz also has a moving walkway, but they did stop that to allow us to get on. Orbitron is next, but I believe that was closed when we were there. You access it via the exit, it's transfer only, and it's got strong centrifugal force, so if you can't hold yourself up, don't do it. Next up is Star Tours. I didn't go on this because it's a simulator and they make me really, really sick. But there are sudden, sharp and jerky movements. So if you're not a fan of that, again, not for you. It's also a 3D glasses thing if you struggle with that. So when you get to the main entrance, a cast member will show you the dedicated entrance for that. And it is transfer only, but there is a lift. A thing that I had difficulty with at Disney is a lot of the rides say transfer only, but really they need kind of a 3-tier system of the ones that you can transfer, which is what my idea of a transfer is, where you're sat in your chair and then just move your butt to the ride car. Whereas the vast majority of these transfer onlys, you had to be able to do some kind of stepping. And Star Tours was one where I didn't go on it, but Beth has just said there were quite a lot of steps to get from your wheelchair into the simulator. So that's something that you have to kind of keep an eye or an ear out for. So next up is Captain Nemo Submarine, which I've never done, Beth has never done. And we didn't even see it. Apparently, it is accessible though. So a cast member will show you to the dedicated entrance and there's a lift. And it says that it's fully wheelchair accessible and service dogs allowed. We didn't go on it, we don't know. But hopefully, if you try it or have you done it, let us know in the comments. Next up, Hyperspace Mountain, and this was closed when we were there, unfortunately. It is transfer only, and on this one, on some of the rides, they have a specific time limit you have to transfer in. A lot of them are really good. They'll just stop the ride and you can take as long as you need to get from your wheelchair to the ride, but this one you only have 45 seconds. Basically, you only have 45 seconds to transfer, so it is a time limited one. So if you can't transfer quickly, then this probably isn't one for you. It's upside down, it twists, there's a lot of jolting, so if you struggle with that, you're going to struggle with Space Mountain. There are also strobe lights and also a difference in height from when you're on the platform of the ride to what you have to transfer onto. So again, something to be aware of. Autopia, we didn't go on either. There's a dedicated queue entrance, and it's transfer only. The risk with that one is, I think it's like a self-driving thing, so there's risks of other people knocking into you, basically. So be aware of that. Moving on to Adventureland, we've got the Swiss Family Robinson Treehouse. I'm talking about this as a ride, even though it's kind of a playground, but it's one of the bigger playground situations. You have to be able to be unassisted and be able to do steps for that one, so it's not very accessible. It's one of the only places that isn't particularly accessible, but service dogs are allowed in that area. The Indiana Jones ride is up next, and it has a dedicated access entrance. This one is also transfer only and only has 30 seconds for you to be able to transfer. So you've got to be able to transfer quick for that one. We didn't go on this again, and there's also a difference from the platform to the ride car again. So it's not a very easy transfer. That one is also very rickety, so it's going to jolt your head around a bit. So if you have an unstable spine like me, that one's not for you. Pirates of the Caribbean is a little boat ride, and you have access to it at the exit of the ride. There is a difference because it's a boat. You go from standing quite high up to getting in quite low down. It is transfer, but you can take as much time as you need. There's no time pressure on that one. It can get hot and humid in there, and there is the possibility of you getting a tiny bit wet, nothing major. But it also does have some flashing lights, so keep an eye out for that. But that was a good one. Phantom Manor is our next ride, and it was actually the first one that we went on at Disneyland, and it was Amali's first ride ever, which I can't believe. It's very dark in there, so if you are not a fan of the dark, that's not one for you. And it does have another moving walkway, but that can be stopped for as long as you need to transfer, so there's no pressure, and that one is kind of the same height, so you could do a direct transfer from your wheelchair into the ride pretty easily on that one. And service dogs are also allowed, so Fliss came along with us. Oh, and the access is via the exit to the ride. Big Thunder Mountain was also closed. It's been closed for most of June, and actually all I've seen of it on TikTok since it reopened is it breaking down again, and people having to walk to be evacuated. So do maybe leave that one for a little while until the teething problems are sorted out. But again, that one's a bit of a rickety, jerky one, so if you've got head and neck problems, it's probably not ideal. Big Thunder Mountain is pretty intense movement-wise and sound-wise, and although there's no difference in height for the transfer, you do only have 30 seconds to transfer. It's not one of the ones that can be stopped. So if you can transfer quick, that's great. If not, it's not the one for you. Moving on to Fantasyland next. So the Snow White ride is first up in Fantasyland, and this is another dark one, so if you're not a big fan of the dark, then that one's not for you. It's transfer only in 30 seconds and has limited legroom. And Pinocchio is exactly the same, and we didn't do either of those ones, not because of the access, just because we didn't. The Carousel is not very accessible from experience. The Carousel is very sweet, and yes, you could do a small 1 or 2 steps and get in the carriage, but I decided to find a low horse and then got a bit stuck and needed Beth to kind of lift me off almost, so wouldn't super recommend the Carousel for that, but is very cute. Would probably have just been as cute just to watch, but yeah, we had fun despite it not being very accessible. Oh, you can bring a service dog on the Carousel though. That would have been cute. So I really loved Peter Pan's Flight, which is next on our list. It's quite an easy transfer. There's no time limit on the transfer. You could sit directly next to it and just scooch over. We all did a couple of steps to leave our wheelchairs, and that was absolutely fine. But Beth and I have just been reading the notes about it. And because it's a boat and you're kind of hanging from the ceiling, so there's dark areas for one, but what we've just read is that it can take some time depending on where you are in the ride for you to get evacuated if you need to get evacuated, but also depending on where you are in the ride, they may need to use a ladder to get you down. So that was not mentioned anywhere. Basically on the priority pass they ask you if with assistance from someone else you can like walk, and so I'm like, well yeah, like with Beth on one side, Ian on the other side, I'm good, but I can't go down a blooming ladder.
That's something else.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, to my knowledge, doesn't break down that often because I would have known about that, but just to be wary of. Dumbo, we didn't go on. It's very cute. It's the same as the Aladdin magic carpets. I can't imagine either are very accessible, just transfer only. transfer only, which I would assume would involve at least a couple of steps for those ones, but they're very cute. So there's Alice in Wonderland's Labyrinth, which we didn't do, but is apparently very cute to do, and you can go around it in a wheelchair, apparently. We've got to go back to check now, but do let me know if you've done it. But at the end or the middle of the labyrinth, the maze, there is like a house type structure, and basically people like climbed up to be like, yay, we did it, but there's no lift or anything, so you can't have that moment at the end of the maze if you're a wheelchair user. Teacups. Teacups was good, we enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say the most accessible of the transfer, because I'm pretty sure there was a lip to get up on the... So they had like a edge around the edge, and then where the teacups were, and then you had to get in the teacup. The opening on the teacup was not very wide. My hips kind of got stuck, and you had to walk a fair distance because I had to leave my wheelchair right on the edge. And then there wasn't a specific, like, the cast members didn't take us to or let us have a cup by the edge. It was a free-for-all, so I ended up having to walk further than expected. So maybe just say to a cast member, I can't walk very far, so can I have a closer teacup, so that you can do that more easily than I did. Centrifugal force, probably not that bad, but it depends who you've got spinning it, if it's Ian. There's a mini roller coaster called Casey Jr. that we didn't do. It's transfer only, and unfortunately that's all the information we have. So there's a little storybook boat ride in Fantasyland that we didn't get to go on, which I'm kind of gutted about, and it's transfer only, and there's a difference in height with all the boat rides, Pirates, Small World, and that one. You know, you have to go from the dock to a boat that's lower, so they're a bit tricky in terms of the transfer, and then the same getting out. The dock is higher, and Pirates and this fairy tale one are definitely transfer only. But apparently in Small World there is a wheelchair accessible boat, but we were not told about this when I showed up with my wheelchair. So I think sometimes there's just a little bit of like having to ask or having to say, oh, I'd like to stay in my wheelchair, because yeah, the cast member didn't mention that, and I didn't have my stick because Lauren had it, and just at that point in the day I needed a lot of help from Beth and Ian, and it would have been much better if I could have stayed in my chair, and would have been an interesting experience as well. So yes, but apparently you can, on It's a Small World, stay in your wheelchair. Obviously It's a Small World, there's lots going on, there's lots of lights and stuff, but apart from that, I don't think there's anything else particularly access-wise that's a problem. It's a cute one. And you can bring a dog on that one. And you can bring your service dog. Oh. Now we are moving on to the Walt Disney Studios, which I think is getting renamed very, very soon. But we're going to go through the rides on there for you as well. First up, we're going with Production Courtyard, which is the main bit as you come into the studios after the indoor bit. So we're starting off with Tower of Terror. And if you've watched the vlog, you'll know how I feel about this. Tower of Terror is definitely transfer only, and when I say transfer only, it means steps. Like, you have to leave your wheelchair outside the door. Tower of Terror is kind of a lift in premise, and you have to leave your wheelchair outside the door and then come through into the ride and then sit down. There are some steps if you want to go not in the front row. So yes, definitely have to be ambulatory for that one. Would not recommend if you have bonds. Would not recommend if you have little control of your legs, because mine ended up flying in the air. The centrifugal force, yeah, loads. So apparently it's got an audio loop. Marley didn't come on that one with us, so we didn't find out about that one.
Because there's like the little story bits in between.
Oh, okay.
But we don't remember.
I was going to say, so we're talking about the audio hearing loop to help you hear little story bits in between the ride. Did I hear any of those? No, and it was not because I have anything wrong with my hearing. It was because I was too focused on being thrown around. Anyway, it says if you suffer from dizziness, don't do it. I should have listened. Yeah, The only thing that was good is that you had as much time as you needed to get on and off, and the cast member that we had on that particular day put his arm out to help me because I was definitely struggling when we were getting off. So yeah, you've got all the time you need to transfer, but it will wreak havoc on your body if you have a condition like POTS. And there are flashing lights and a bit of a scary story, and don't do it if you have any heart anything. So there's a couple of rides that Beth's just telling me, you kind of, if you go in the accessible line, and the access for Tower of Terror is through the shop, you miss out on the story that they kind of build in the queue line. So it's like that for Buzz Lightyear and for Tower of Terror. And you don't really get that whole storytelling experience, but also you don't have to wait very long. So Beth said it's not worth it. Worlds of Pixar is next. So the Cars ride we didn't do, it's transfer only, and there's quite a lot of centrifugal force on that one. Crush's Coaster. Now with Crush's Coaster, again, the entrance is a special entrance. There's a sign for it outside. But basically, to make sure that you can do the evacuation, they make you do steps and a walk to kind of prove that you can, which I totally get, but when my adrenaline's pumping, I'd be able to evacuate safely without having to go through the ordeal of going down steps, having to walk and going up steps. So that was quite tricky, and I needed Beth and Ian's support with that. So that's not just a transfer, that is definitely a must-be ambulatory one, because you could definitely go to the access line and then like not be, and then end up having to turn back because you can't do the thing. The ride itself, I'm assuming it has a time. Well, it doesn't because you can't actually, well, because you can't take your wheelchair close enough to the ride. So there's quite a lot of steps and stuff involved in that one. So I was quite dizzy by the time I'd got to the ride. So yeah, and again, it's lower to get into. So it's not the most.
They didn't stop that.
They didn't stop that to give you more time. So it's not the most accessible one, Crush's Coaster, at all, and it's a bit dark as well. Ratatouille. Now, Ratatouille can be very accessible, or as we found out, was not the most accessible. So Ratatouille is like a little rat, the ride car that you get in. You can have a wheelchair transfer onto that and a tie down, and service dogs can go on there, because in the ride you experience a lot of sensory things. So there's hot, there's cold, not in an amount that would, set off my heat intolerance, but there's flashes of heat and cold and smells. And I remember Lauren telling us about Fliss poking her nose up in the air when there were the smells, because she was like, delicious. And so yes, you can do it on the wheelchair accessible car. Again, Marley and me, we transferred, and that was fine, but then you get off in a completely different section to where you get on. So our wheelchairs were left nowhere near us, and because they are both electric wheelchairs, the staff weren't able or allowed to turn them on or move them. If this had been communicated to us at the start, then we could have said, no, we need them, because it was a long walk back to them, and I couldn't make it. So if we'd have been able to say to them, oh, we'll put it in manual mode, can you bring it through, or anything like that, that would have helped. So that's my tip, is to just, if you need your wheelchair immediately after getting off that ride and you're not taking it on the ride, just say that you will turn it onto manual mode so it can be pushed. There is a Premier Access entrance which doubles as the access entrance for Ratatouille. Toy Story Playland is next. We did a few rides at Toy Story. Slinky Dog, you need to walk a bit, and you can't have service dogs on that one. It's kind of a few steps. And then the Toy Soldiers parachute drop. This one we got a little bit confused because we weren't told which parachute we were supposed to go in first, but they have a dedicated wheelchair parking spot and you could easily do a direct transfer. It's slightly higher than a wheelchair, but you could directly transfer into that with if you have help with you or if you're very good at transferring, and then park your wheelchair up. So that one's pretty good in terms of accessibility. They just weren't great at instructions. And then RC Racer, when we were there, was closed unfortunately, but again that would be a transfer only, but you'd have as much time as you needed to transfer. I can't imagine you can have dogs on that one. No. And then we're heading to Marvel Avengers Campus. The one ride that we all did together there was Spider-Man's Web. What's it called? Spider-Man's Web Adventure. So I got to ride that with Lauren and Fliss. So they have just a place you can transfer. So, but then they have a separate entrance to get to the wheelchair only carriage, because you have to get on it a different way, which meant I then had to leave my wheelchair a fair way away, but I could take my stick, so it wasn't too much of an issue. But basically it had 2 seats in it and then a wheelchair space, so Felix and I sat in the seats, and then Lauren was tied down, as you can see in this video, and Fliss was laying down in front of her. The only thing with this one is that it's dark for a start, and there's screens which are not like a simulator but can make you feel a little bit like whoa, but it's kind of like a laser shooter ride, sort of like Buzz Lightyear, but instead of having an actual gun that you have to press, you have to use your hands like this. And I know Marley dislocated something, and my arms were very sore afterwards. So depends how involved you want to get into it, but it's not very accessible from that point of view. But it's still enjoyable if you just want to go along for the ride. Oh, and it's the 3D glasses one, that one. So if you don't like 3D glasses, then that's not an ideal one. Avengers Assemble Flight Force is next. This is another one that I didn't go on because it was going to make me unwell. So Flight Force is very dark, has strobe lights, and is a transfer only, and you've only got 45 seconds to transfer. So it's not one that can be stopped for you. Basically, Lauren says that if she goes on it, she then can't do anything else for the rest of the day, which is why I didn't bother going on it. But I know that the boys absolutely loved it. So if you're a Marvel fan, it might be worth it. I am a Marvel fan, but not that much. So yeah, so that is a big roundup of all the rides in Disneyland Paris and their accessibility information. Make sure you save this video somewhere to come back to if you need it for your next trip. And we'll see you very, very soon for another video. Our next one is going to be the accessibility review of everything else. So make sure you come back for that. And if you haven't already, I'd love it if you'd hit the subscribe button. I'll see you soon for another video.